For generations, people have been told that the road to success is paved with hardship, struggle, and suffering. Stories of entrepreneurs who lost everything before building empires, leaders who endured years of rejection before rising to prominence, and inventors who failed countless times before achieving breakthroughs are often repeated as though they represent the only possible pathway to greatness. While these stories are inspiring, they also create the illusion that suffering is a universal requirement for success. In reality, not all men must endure endless pain or deep despair before achieving their goals. Success does not always demand a narrative of rock bottom or extraordinary sacrifice. For many, it comes from preparation, discipline, learning from others, and leveraging the resources and opportunities already available to them. The belief that suffering must precede success is rooted in cultural traditions and motivational rhetoric. People love underdog stories. The tale of someone who overcame insurmountable odds appeals to our emotions because it demonstrates resilience and the human spirit as capacity to rise. However, success is not defined by the depth of one's struggles. It is defined by one's ability to set a goal, pursue it with consistency, and adapt to challenges along the way. A man may face obstacles, but these do not necessarily have to be catastrophic or unbearable in order for him to grow and achieve success. Suffering may be one pathway to strength, but it is not the only one. One of the primary reasons men do not always have to suffer before succeeding is the power of preparation and learning. A man who observes the mistakes of others and internalizes those lessons can avoid many of the pitfalls that would otherwise lead to unnecessary hardship. For example, if someone studies the failures of failed businesses before launching his own company, he can sidestep common errors and focus on strategies with higher chances of success. Preparation reduces suffering because it transforms blind trial and error into intentional decision-making. Instead of crashing into every wall, a prepared individual learns how to open doors. History is filled with men who succeeded not because they endured extreme suffering, but because they were disciplined enough to prepare, listen, and learn. Another factor is mentorship and guidance. Many men achieve success faster and with less suffering because they had access to mentors, people who walked the path before them and were willing to share wisdom. A mentor can save years of wasted effort by pointing out shortcuts, resources, and hidden dangers. A young man, under the guidance of an experienced leader, does not need to fail dozens of times before he learns what works. Instead, he builds upon the foundation of those who came before him. This is why mentorship is often described as standing on the shoulders of giants. With guidance, success becomes less about suffering through every possible mistake, and more about strategically applying proven principles. It is also important to note the role of environment and opportunity. Some men are raised in conditions that provide access to quality education, financial support, and a network of connections. This does not mean they will not face challenges, but it does mean they may avoid the kind of deep suffering others experience. For instance, a man born into a stable family that values education and discipline has an advantage compared to someone who grew up without resources or support. His pathway to success may involve hard work, but it will not necessarily involve the crushing weight of suffering. Instead of spending years fighting poverty or systemic barriers, he can focus his energy on building skills and seizing opportunities. In this way, success becomes a matter of maximizing available advantages rather than enduring endless hardship. Discipline and consistency also play a major role in reducing suffering on the road to success. Many men who succeed early in life do so not because they suffered greatly, but because they practiced consistency and patience. A man who wakes up early, studies daily, invests wisely, and avoids distractions may find that his steady discipline leads him to success without ever having to endure severe suffering. Consistency often beats intensity. Small daily improvements compound over time, creating results that look like overnight success to others. In truth, such men avoided suffering not by luck, but by embracing habits that made suffering unnecessary. Another reason not all men must suffer before success is the ability to leverage modern resources. In today's world, information is more accessible than ever before. Books, podcasts, online courses, and digital mentors allow men to learn almost anything without enduring the years of trial and error that were once inevitable. Technology has opened pathways for men to succeed with less pain, because the answers to many challenges already exist, waiting to be applied. For example, An aspiring entrepreneur can study free resources on business, finance, and leadership, equipping himself with knowledge that minimizes mistakes. A man committed to self-education can avoid suffering by preparing himself in ways previous generations could not. It is also worth discussing the difference between necessary struggle and unnecessary suffering. Struggle is inevitable. In life, every man will face setbacks, rejections, or challenges. However, suffering implies prolonged, intense hardship that wears down the spirit. Not all struggles rise to the level of suffering, and not all suffering leads to growth. A man can succeed through manageable struggles by embracing resilience, adaptability, and persistence without ever experiencing extreme despair. The difference lies in perspective and preparation. By expecting challenges and equipping themselves to handle them, men transform potential suffering into manageable growth experiences. Psychologically, the belief that suffering is necessary for success can also be limiting. Men who internalize this idea may unconsciously sabotage themselves, waiting for suffering to validate their journey. They may reject opportunities for smooth progress, believing that it can't be real success unless it hurts. This mindset is dangerous because it glorifies pain rather than progress. In truth, success is about results, not the depth of scars along the way. Men who focus on growth, learning, and progress may find success comes without dramatic suffering, and their achievements are no less valid than those who endured harsher paths. Furthermore, collaboration and community can drastically reduce suffering on the road to success. Men who attempt to succeed entirely alone may face greater struggles, but those who build strong networks, partnerships, and communities often find their journey easier. Collaboration allows individuals to share burdens, exchange resources, and accelerate growth. A man who surrounds himself with like-minded peers and supportive allies can avoid unnecessary suffering by leaning on collective strength. In history and in modern life, countless men succeeded not because they suffered more than others, but because they worked with others more effectively. Lastly, success is not always defined by extraordinary external achievements. For many men, success is living a balanced, meaningful life, supporting a family, pursuing passions, maintaining health, and contributing to community. In such cases, success comes not through suffering, but through wise choices, self-awareness, and discipline. These men prove that suffering is not the universal key to fulfillment. Instead, intentional living and clarity of purpose can create success without unnecessary pain. In summary, while suffering can be a teacher and may play a role in some success stories, it is not a requirement for all men. Preparation, mentorship, environment, discipline, modern resources, perspective, collaboration, and clarity all provide alternative pathways to achievement. Most men do not need to hit rock bottom or endure endless suffering before they succeed. Instead, they can succeed by making wise choices, learning from others, and applying consistent effort. The myth of suffering as a prerequisite to success should not discourage men who find smoother paths. Success is not validated by pain but by growth, impact, and fulfillment. Another reason most men don't always have to suffer before success is because of the resources and opportunities available in today's world. Unlike in the past, where knowledge was locked in books or universities that only a few could access, now information is everywhere on the internet: podcasts, seminars, online courses, and mentorship programs. A man who is willing to learn can access years of wisdom in a matter of weeks. He doesn't have to fall into every trap himself. He can watch others fall and learn the lesson without the wound. This is the advantage of living in an era of abundance rather than scarcity. For example, a man who wants to start a business doesn't have to waste years guessing how to run it. He can study case studies, learn from free resources, and even connect with people who've already built successful companies. This cuts down on unnecessary failure. Men who recognized this leveraged knowledge as a shortcut to success, bypassing the kind of suffering that comes from ignorance or trial and error. Additionally, many men today succeed because they understand the importance of environment. They don't wait for their surroundings to crush them before they change. Instead, they proactively build circles of influence that push them higher. When you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, wealthy, or skilled, you naturally absorb their habits and insights. This eliminates the need to go through painful experiences to learn basic lessons. A man who surrounds himself with financially literate friends, for instance, doesn't need to suffer through bankruptcy before he learns to budget and invest. His environment teaches him without trauma. Another point is emotional intelligence. Some men succeed early because they master their emotions instead of letting pain and suffering be their only teachers. They learn to control anger, avoid pride, and manage stress, which allows them to make clear-headed decisions. Instead of blowing opportunities due to ego or impatience, they keep calm, think long-term, and move strategically. These men don't necessarily have to go through extreme suffering to learn discipline. They already practiced it in smaller areas of life and built it into their character. Finally, many men don't need to suffer before success because they are willing to sacrifice comfort in exchange for growth. This isn't the same as suffering. Sacrifice is intentional. It's choosing discipline over laziness, work over distraction, and vision over instant gratification. Suffering, on the other hand, is often unplanned hardship. Men who choose sacrifice, like waking up early, saving money, or staying consistent, avoid the heavy consequences that lead others into years of pain. They succeed not because they were spared challenges, but because they turned challenges into choices before they turned into suffering. Another truth about success is that most men who don't suffer before achieving it are the ones who understand leverage. They realize early in life that no one reaches greatness alone. So instead of trying to do everything by themselves, they lean on systems, networks, and collaborations. A man who understands leverage doesn't waste years exhausting himself on tasks that can be delegated. He focuses on the activities that create the most impact. This prevents unnecessary struggle and accelerates results. For example, if a man wants to build wealth, he might learn how to invest, hire an accountant, and use software to track progress instead of stumbling through years of financial mistakes. By standing on the shoulders of experts, he gains wisdom without enduring the same hardships those experts went through to acquire it. Moreover, many men avoid suffering by recognizing patterns. Life is full of repeated cycles, and those who pay attention can predict outcomes without having to live through the worst scenarios themselves.